To see examples of what we talked about on this episode, along with further information, go to bunchofdorks.com.
Welcome everyone to
Two Dimension Podcast,
the comic book podcast
with no direction. What's up, ladies and gentlemen? You know that song, you know this voice. It's your boy Rook, joining me as always in this corner, standing at 7 foot tall. It's the one and only Don Moore.
Hello, everybody.
Oh yeah, I'm convinced Don is 7 foot tall, only because I'm 5'6". And if you hear that voice joining us, our guest this evening, with his comic book Invasion from Planet Wrestletopia, we welcome to the show Ed Cannell. Ed, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate being here.
Oh, man, I got to tell you, Don sends me the link to the book. It says, hey, this is a guest coming up. I open it up, and immediately, first thing I see on this cover, I'm like, I'm in.
That's awesome.
So, we're talking off mic before the show. Tampa is a huge wrestling community. Yes, absolutely. So wrestling is just part of growing up here. So to read through this book, I am dying laughing at some of the behaviors in this book of the characters because it's so bloody spot on. For our listeners, just give them an idea of what this book is.
Yes, okay, that's a good place to start. Right. So it's Invasion from Planet Wrestletopia, and like you said, it was a miniseries, and we've just now collected it into a trade paperback, they call them, which we have in digital format, but now we have printed copies, which is really cool. But yeah, Invasion from Planet Wrestletopia. So there's this sort of disgruntled professional wrestler. It's the Rock and Roll Rory Landell. And he's promised the world title by his promoter, but then his promoter, screws him over, changes his mind last minute. So Rory goes on live TV and says, I don't care about the freaking world belt, doesn't matter. I'm the galactic champion of the universe, brother. And this is live TV, so of course the signal goes to outer space. And it turns out that kind of boast was a really bad idea, because there's the planet Wrestletopia. 15 years later, they get this signal. The one true galactic champion on Wrestletopia is really pissed, and hence the invasion by Wrestletopia. And then, kind of my favorite part, or one of my favorite parts about it all, is that the Wrestletopians don't show up. It takes them 15 years to hear this, to intercept this TV signal and invade the planet. And by that time, life is notoriously unkind to professional wrestlers, right? Especially when they fall from grace. So by the time Wrestletopians show up, he's sleeping in an irrigation pipe, and
yeah.
It's typically homeless. And it's that's our best shot. That's our last greatest hope is this professional wrestler. So it takes off from there, and we're really happy with the way it turned out. It was really, really, really fun to work on, and it was both the other writer, Matt Enton, and I were, you talked about, wrestling in Florida. That makes a lot of sense, because I'm a little older, and I grew up watching wrestling in the late 70s and throughout the late 70s and throughout the 80s, right? And I do remember wrestling was huge in Florida. I never could watch it, but because we didn't have cable for a while, and then those old territory days when Florida was huge. I remember reading all about Dusty Rhodes and Kevin Sullivan and all those everything going on in Florida. And it's funny that you mentioned it, but and so a lot of the book is Matt and I both being obsessed with wrestling as kids, And therefore really kind of want to, it's obviously sort of a comedy action, but we really wanted to sort of get it right as far as the wrestlers and how they talked and how what the business was like, as far as we can tell in the different eras that this book spans. And there's a lot of in the protagonist Rock and Roll Roy Mandel, there's a lot of Dusty Rhodes in there and Randy Savage and all that stuff. He's kind of an amalgam of all those guys, and I loved it. I was obsessed with it growing up. I don't watch it as much now, truthfully. I kind of just keep an eye on it, from a distance.
Yep.
But I'll always be grateful to the professional wrestlers of my youth.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
One thing on this book, that was a very good synopsis, what you told us.
Yeah, thanks.
But you do an outstanding job. A lot of times when I read stuff about wrestling in comic books, it's always over the top, which is fun and it's fine. But yours, you show the glamour. I mean, the lights, the excitement, the color, and the verbal way they all act and talk. But then you switch it off and you show the seediness to it. The crummy lifestyle, the income, and the carnival kind of backstage life.
Yeah.
But you're never glorifying it, or you putting it down. You're showing showing both sides of it, and it's a tight story. I mean, I don't know your background in comics, but you certainly know how to tell a story in comics. I say this all this is a line I say to a lot of guests here. My eye knew where to go. It wasn't hard. You sucked me in. The story seemed to tell me exactly what I needed at all times to keep my interest. And it went through quiet parts, it went through verbal blasting parts, it went through cosmic excitement. And there were calm spots in the story, but there was never a lull where I'm thinking I'll put it down and go make a sandwich or something, or start watching TV. It kept going. The designs, the fights. Nicely choreographed fights. Now I've read a lot of comics in my life. I've never stopped. Sometimes fights seem too staged and sterile. These were innovative and fun. And, as we go on in the conversation, I'd like to hear how these were staged. Was it written for the artist? Did the artist have to figure some things out? Because
our artists, so we had two artists. It kind of took a while to get 6 issues done, and Matt and I found out it's kind of hard to keep a group of artists together for a long period of time. Even we're paying everybody their page rate and everything, but it's just different. That artists are just nomadic and and they get busy with different things. But so anyway, 2 artists, but neither one of them was really had ever watched wrestling or was into it. So we had to really and this was fine, but we had to really be descriptive and just really be okay, this is what we want you to draw. And I, growing up, had watched. Again, I haven't been an active fan in a long time, but probably growing up, had watched hundreds, maybe thousands of hours of wrestling, right? So you have all that knowledge, and then of course YouTube is available too. You can look up any singular wrestling move. You can just look up on YouTube, and there'll be a 10-second snippet of almost any move that you can name. But then the other thing I did was, so you do a lot of research, but the other thing I did was I bought a bunch of WWE action figures at the store. So I had probably I don't know, half dozen or more, AJ Styles and Dusty Rhodes, the classic, and I would play with them and in my 40s, late 40s, I'm playing with these things, actively playing with them, not just collecting them and looking at them, but I'm actively playing. And trying to, choreograph for myself, like, okay, what would look cool and what would happen? How could this look cool and look, be somewhat realistic to the matches that you would have seen at that point in time. The book spans a couple of different eras of wrestling, and so the action figures are maybe for me I don't know, were a help. They were like the extra boost to kind of figure things out. And, that was interesting. Yeah, but these guys neither artist really knew wrestling. They started to kind of dig it, somewhat. We sent them like piles of old wrestling magazines that we got off eBay.
There you go.
And he's looking at these. He's like, "Oh wow, this is, it's also probably like with the action stuff, like you said, it's a little bit, it's not necessarily like the fun part of, I think, writing a comic book. Probably the fun part for a writer, or for me, is like, you're trying to write cool dialogue, and focus, and the cool scene, cool parts where there's, the aliens invade and they hold Earth hostage. But we have, but it's really, really important, right? Like I think, like, I'm gonna guess it's maybe similar to a movie where maybe the fun part isn't necessarily choreographic fight scenes. Maybe you'd rather be like, writing dialogue or working on something more sexy. But then I realized, like, oh, this is really important. You can't just like, it's really important. We can't just be like, oh, just whatever, body slams and whatever, I don't know, just make something up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, this deserves some time and attention to try to make it, like, I don't know, sort of different and cool and just not sort of cliched and boring.
Well, you definitely did that. I got to tell you, like.
Yes.
Going through the fight scenes in the book, I mean, it's really interesting because you mentioned how the book goes through several decades of wrestling, and that's something I actually notice is you have some very different looks to your characters as the years go on, along with the way that they're moving in the ring, which is very accurate to what wrestling has done over the years, evolved and changed. Yeah. Don mentioned in regards to how you have the characters outside of the ring in their normal lives, and it's really interesting because, I've seen wrestlers growing up in this area, being around a lot of them. I've seen wrestlers at the top of their game and at the very bottom of it in some of the situations that Rory finds himself in. Not battling aliens, but...
It's a hard fall.
It is. You did a fantastic job of representing these characters. I really have to say.
Yeah, thank you. Don, you'd mentioned earlier that there's sort of that aspect to the wrestling where it's like the carnival, and I mean, you guys probably know this, especially being in Florida, but wrestling did evolve straight out of the carnival, right? Mm-hmm. The circus, like it was, I don't know, more than 100 years ago, it was part of the circus, and it kind of broke off. And so that is, that's what they do. They truck around with their gear, find some place to wrestle, throw up the ring, you know what I mean? Charge, fill the seats, and then put on their show. And it's great theater. You talked about, like how in the book we try to kind of respect these people as performers and their what they're doing. It really is great theater. In fact, I read a little, essay in the back of the book.
Yes.
We needed some bonus material. We didn't really have any, so we had to go and just write some essay. But I mean, I do sincerely think it is, one of the greatest storytelling mediums that we've ever come up with. Especially when you consider that again, well, regardless of when you became a fan or where you started to, if you start to become a fan tomorrow, we understand it's choreographed. We understand it's scripted. But if you can sort of suspend that, if you have some suspension of disbelief, it really does combine both the unpredictability of like sports, where we don't know who's going to win, and then just great theater, right? Like just great. Yeah. It just kind of it lived in it sort of lives in the best of both worlds, where I don't know what's going to happen, and it appears very much like a contest where I don't know who's going to win, and it's great. And then you also going back to the carnival thing, I think that's what fascinates me about it now is not so much watching it, but that it really was an outlaw culture, right?
Yeah.
Kind of the deal. And when you go, I think the last book I read was a biography on Gorgeous George. The last wrestling book that I read was, and it's utterly fascinating. Like just the way they lived their lives in almost this, again, this outlaw society, and doing their thing, and just the good and the bad of that, right? Like there's a show Dark Side of the Ring, which is fascinating, right? For that reason, and it can be pretty depressing.
Yeah.
But when you read books too, though, you can kind of some of these books will focus on something, the great time, like you said, the glamour, the patches of glamour these guys can find themselves in, and it's just absolutely fascinating. I could read about old school. Like I could read about these. I could read these memoirs. I constantly behind the scenes stuff. It's utterly fascinating.
Yeah, I agree. That's one of my favorite things with wrestling. Is some of the stuff behind the scenes. Undertaker has this great podcast now where he goes through a lot of the in and outs of what happens in the locker room and at hotels and stuff. These people wrestlers are endlessly funny. I mean, like they can take any joke and roll with it like an improv actor. It's amazing to me. Let me ask about the book for a minute. There was a few things that you did in the book that I absolutely found hilarious. The first one is the steel cage around the entire planet.
That's one of my favorite images in the book, and it's one that we'll sometimes show. When we're trying to get people, we're trying to show people the concept and get them sold on the concept. And maybe I think my background is kind of
that right there, putting the steel cage up.
I can't remember exactly. I think early on we were like, okay, what are the aliens going to do? But what wrestling aliens do when they get here? Like it's an interplanetary cage match, so you gotta
throw up the steel cage, baby.
Yeah. And that was one of my favorite images in there that I was excited to see drawn and all that stuff. And it is one that people have brought up, who have read the book, and they'll bring that up, and I love that. I can't remember exactly when and we came up with it, but it was. I think that was kind of like a day one.
Yeah. I was wondering if that was in there from the beginning, because, the steel cage is just such a staple of wrestling. The idea of putting a steel cage around the whole planet, I'm looking at that panel going, hilariously brilliant. Hilariously brilliant.
I don't know, it was like a day one thing, and it's just so... in a good way, it's so stupid. It's like, why are they bothering? Like, why would you bother to put a cage? It's not like everyone under Earth can fly away. But they don't know.
They don't know they can do it. Why can't we?
Right.
That's something in the story I really like. Like, when it shows the astronomers and they're arguing about, calling the guy. Yeah, I can see that. I don't work in that part, kind of industry, but it made sense. It's not over the top, and then guy gets mad. This better be serious. He's there in his bedclothes. He doesn't know, and I'm thinking it seemed real until I started seeing these mechanics putting the cage together. But it's all treated with massive respect, like it's real.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. I think what I like about this, and I think what I like about or the type of humor that I like in general is no one in this book is trying to be funny. Obviously, right? They're just doing things that to them make sense.
Yeah.
Like, if you hear somebody on another planet say, I'm the galactic champion of the universe, and you're the galactic champion of the universe, you're like, no, you're pissed. and you're putting the steel cage up. And then I think, it was funny, we're like, okay, they're going to put a steel cage, and I think we had to sit and think, well, couldn't someone on Earth notice?
Yeah.
Notice, like, there's astronomers, right? They're looking at the sky. Would this come to someone's attention? And then, so we had to write a scene, but I do like how that scene turned out because it's pretty brief. We don't spend like 9 pages trying to explain why there's a cage around the Earth. It just
yeah. Well, I think anybody reading this book, whether you're a wrestling fan or not, you've had to have heard of the steel cage match. So the idea of that is just it's so simply brilliant. That there has to be a steel cage match somewhere. Why not make the whole planet the steel cage match?
Yeah, I think we're talking about astronomy and the sky, and there was this one joke in the book, which is not my joke, so I'm not laughing at my own joke. This was my co-writer Matt Enton who came up with this. This one I remember. It was his idea because when I read it, I laughed so hard, but. Later in the book, there's this sort of TV. I don't want to give out any spoilers, really, but there's this sort of montage on television where you're viewing some constellations in the night sky, and the narrator says, Copernicus, Galileo, he names all these ancient astronomers, and he says. For centuries, man has looked to the universe and wondered, is there life out there? And can it wrestle? It's so stupid, but the person who's narrating it is very serious about this. Right? It's not a joke, and that's what I like. People aren't trying to be funny; they're just behaving in a way, trying to get what they want, or behaving in a way that's normal to them.
Yeah.
But it's so stupid.
But the thing with that line, I can hear that line being delivered by an announcer. I really can. And that's one of the best parts about this book is like reading through it. I'm going, I can actually hear this going on at a wrestling event. I can hear wrestlers saying this. I can hear announcers saying all of this stuff. I mean.
Wrestling has given us so much. It's given us so much great entertainment, but part of it also, when we look back on it and at the stuff we watched when you were a kid, and maybe at the time it was really impressive, and you look back on it, and it's so stupid that it's hilarious, right?
Yep.
The stuff that always happened around WrestleMania was treated like, it was over the top. It took itself very seriously, wrestling did at times, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even with like the silliest stuff. And then to look back on it, you almost want, it's the kind of thing where you're like, did that really happen? Did they really have Liberace at WrestleMania? What?
Did I really just watch Speed get cut in half by Braun Breaker? What? Why is Speed in the Royal Rumble?
Well,
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Here's something about wrestling that it always stays with me. Is that movie They Live, that John Carpenter movie, Roddy Piper?
Roddy
I
Piper.
love. Now, I don't follow wrestling. I saw this at a friend's house, and we're watching it with no sound, and it just catches me. And my friend, he's one of the wrestlers. Really? And he said, I've always heard the names on the radio. Well, then later I found out John Carpenter was talking. That when they were doing the film, whoever's in charge of the WWE wouldn't release Roddy Piper from his contract.
That's what
he said.
Yep.
I'll find you another film making the same kind of money. And Roddy Piper said, no, I'm going to do this. So he left the WWE. And John Carpenter said, are you sure? And he said, yeah, I want to do the film. He did the film. Later, the WWE brought him back at 4 times the amount of pay. And John Carpenter said, I'll never understand that industry. Which is exactly how I see it, and that's part of the mystique, which you show in your book. The odd logic of their world.
Sort of as an aside, what I know about Roddy Piper, because he actually lived in the Portland area most of his life. He lived in a suburb of Portland, Oregon. But he was interesting guy because, back in the 80s, of course, he was a huge heel. And he was, next to Hogan. He might have, for a time anyway, he was maybe the second biggest star in the company. The Pacific Northwest, or Portland wrestling, was not the first territory he wrestled in, but it was one of the early territories Roddy Piper wrestled in when no one really knew who he was. And the promoter, the guy who owned Portland Wrestling, Don Owens, who was like 105 years old back in the 70s when I started watching wrestling, but he really liked Piper and helped push him to become kind of a big star in the NWA, like prior to Hulkamania and all that. So anyway, Roddy Piper is forever grateful to Don Owens and Portland Wrestling. So much later, Roddy Piper becomes this big star at the WWF, as it was called at the time. And he told Vince McMahon, I will never wrestle in Portland, Oregon. He's like, I just won't do it because I'm loyal still to Portland Wrestling. And nobody said no to Vince McMahon back then, right? He would just fire you and make another replace you. So, and then he said, he went one step further. He said, not only will I never wrestle for you or for WWF in Portland, but I will still wrestle, even though I'm under contract. I will wrestle for Don Owens every once in a while. I will wrestle for him.
Ooh, really?
I saw him wrestle Playboy Buddy Rose in the 80s. I can't remember the exact day. I'd have to look it up. But in the Portland's Memorial Coliseum on Don Owens, every once in a while Don Owens would throw like a super card. And it would be at the Memorial Coliseum that the Portland Trailblazers used to play. And you can fit like 13,000 people in there if you're lucky. And so he was wrestling there even when he was with the WWF because he loved Don Owens and loved Portland wrestling. And so I'm not surprised to hear that story where he basically did the same thing. Except, F off, I'm going to go do this movie.
Yeah, yeah.
Didn't lose it. But I guess going back to your original point, I don't understand it either, really. I mean, I have read so many of these memoirs and mini documentaries and things that, I think, it is a strange business. I mean, obviously it's built on, can you draw money? Can you sell tickets and merchandise? And if you can do that, you would have some power. You could have some star power that you can use. But in wrestling, it's so easy to replace you, right? Because it's not so much about it's about talent for sure. But it's not necessarily like being like an NFL athlete where it's like if you're rushing for 200 yards and 3 touchdowns every game, you're going to get a huge contract and you can and even if you have kind of a bad attitude, the coach isn't going to bench you. But in wrestling, there's a famous quote by a member of the Reinsdorf family who owns the Chicago White Sox and the Chicago Bulls. And I think it was the senior Reinsdorf. You know, they used to do some wrestling outdoors in the White Sox stadium, like way back. And I think this member of the Reinsdorf family, he said, you know, I love wrestling. I wish I was in the business. Anytime one of those, you know, blonde-haired wrestlers breaks a leg or asks for too much money, you just fire them and go find another. You know, it's. I don't want to say that the wrestlers are, you know, more replaceable than other entertainers. Obviously, you have a lot of talent, but there's only like so many national companies. There's only so many companies you can go to. First of all, and then you know, that guy had a point, right? Like, you could be a huge star, and if you ask for too much money, if you're a pain in Vince McMahon's ass, then
you're gone.
Find yourself.
Yeah.
You're gone, and somebody else is the next big hot thing.
Yep.
You know.
Well, you read this stuff in the book a little bit because one of the wrestlers shows up late at home. And the woman's upset he's eating a TV dinner, and he says, what did you get? And he put the money down, and she brings up he could make more money working at the cannery.
Yeah.
And he gets upset. Again, it's a good juggling thing showing how they actually live and the world they're working in. It's two different worlds, and it's I want to know your background. How did you create such a beautiful comic?
I will say, and just real quick, in regards to that scene in particular, the wrestler uses the phrase, you know, bookers use a pencil. And that was a phrase, I heard that I don't remember where I picked it up or where I heard, but that's a real phrase these wrestlers used to use. He's like, there's a reason bookers use a pencil. Because you know, they could anytime they could erase your name out of there and replace it. But so Matt and I have been writers for a long time in the video game industry. Going back to the early 2000s. And so that's our day job. And with Wrestletopia, it was just we had this idea. And we'd written so we'd got together and just written some things together, like screenplays and stuff, and they were fun, but they don't really go anywhere. And I in particular loved the idea, the concept for the story so much. I was like, I want to put this out in the world in some format. Because if you write a screenplay, it's neat, but nobody wants to read your screenplay. Like your parents don't want to read your screenplay.
Yeah.
It's just, you know what I mean? So, I mean, comic books is somewhat accessible in that, you know, you have to, if you spend money, you can have artists draw just about anything. And so it was our first comic book. I think you were talking about, like, earlier how it's you know, it's pretty easy to follow. And you know, part of that is probably like our that is as far as these comics are concerned, it's an amateur effort, somewhat amateur effort. Like, we didn't want to do anything fancy. We wanted just to put like panel 1, panel 2, panel 3, panel 4, panel 5. Should we do panel 6? I mean, I think that like we maybe went even a little overboard by maybe a little overboard with trying not to crowd things too much. It's like, you know, there's pages where like this, we probably could have put 7 panels on this page, but there's, you know, 4 or 5 or whatever. But I guess my point there is it was our first comic book, so we're trying to be really careful, not do anything too cute, too fancy. There's a double page spread somewhere in there that takes place in a water slide. That was about as crazy as it got. And the other thing I noticed too is I mean, from a writer's perspective and from the perspective of the people managing this effort, compared to video games, comics are pretty straightforward deal. And again, I don't mean to say they're not complex,
right.
But in a video game, like, you could be working with simultaneously with like 50 people on the same piece of software, like literally the same piece of software, right? There's one build, and you're all contributing. Artists, sound people, programmers, game designers, writers, producers, motion capture, just everything going at once, right? And it's really crazy. With the book, it was like, okay, we'd write a script, and we'd give it to one artist, and that person had a lot of work to do, hard work. But then that one artist turns it over to the one colorist. Once they're finished, then they turn it over to the colorist, who finishes, turns it over to the letterer, and that you're done, right? Like, it's a lot of work, but it's like 6 people instead of 60.
Yeah.
And so we found it super refreshing.
That's something I noticed when I started to read the book, was the credits. That's what kind of astounded me. I says, wow, there's a lot of people that work in this. Because the book is absolutely beautiful. The art, the lettering, the colors, the story, everything is tight. Everything looks the way it should be. It's visually makes me happy to see. And the change in the artist, which it's different to change, and it's always can be hard to change an artist, but especially one that's the first artist was so unique. And I'm thinking, well, how are they going to follow this one up? Well, the second artist is a different kind of artist, but they do a fantastic job following along. It wasn't hard.
They both happen to have their styles just already happen to be not too dissimilar. So with the second one, I mean, Dan Scotti did a great job. He did the first 3 issues, and then he got super busy, just could not do it anymore. So we found Kendall Good, and his style was already, it was just not too dissimilar. But we did tell him, like, he was like, oh, do you want me to try to copy? He was like, and we were like, no, I don't think that's a good idea, because you'll just be
miserable trying to copy somebody else's stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems hard, but I think we just kind of got lucky. When we looked around and found him, and like, oh, okay, it's not too different. So I think we just kind of got lucky there, perhaps. But like I said, I mean, it was 6 issues originally, 6 single issues, and it just took a long time to get them all finished, and it was over a period of several years, and then collecting in this trade, and then it just took a while, to put them in print, because honestly, it was just, I kind of waffled on whether to do it or not, and then I just finally just said, "Oh, screw it," and so I bought probably way too many copies, but printing it is wasn't cheap. So that's part of what took a while is we wanted to pay all the artists got paid. They all got paid their rate. We didn't ask anyone for a break or anything like that. So we would have to work and kind of squirrel money away, and then hope our wives didn't notice how much we were shelling out. Not that the artists were like unreasonable at all. They're if anything they deserve more money, but it just it took a long time to get them all finished and then put it in print. And so what we're hoping is obviously we're selling the book. I should mention we're selling printed copies. You can get it digitally on all kinds of platforms, Amazon and Barnes and Noble and iBooks. But we have printed copies available like on our website, which I'm sure we'll share, and we have a TikTok shop you can get if you want to buy it on TikTok. I guess you can, and eBay. So we're hoping to sell lots of copies and so we can start on our next comic book, which we actually are going to start on pretty soon. We kind of sold enough books to at least get a little bit of a start. So we think we can do, we can get some pages done. It'll be kind of like Wrestletopia. It'll be like fits and starts, but we sold them copies to start on our next one, which is really exciting. So, well, we'll see.
Heck yeah.
Goes, but
See, you came from video games to comic books. You liked it so much. You did 6 issues, and then you went, I'm not done. I'm going to do more.
I wish, if we could, to be honest, I'm not to sound like I'm complaining, but it's like, if we could, it's hard to sell. What I've noticed is that it's very difficult to sell a book like this where it's not a known property, and you're not, Matt and I we're not industry famous at all, even in video games. Like we're not, we're not known people. So face to face, I can do pretty well. Like if I'm at a little comic book like swap meet or flea market thing. I did one in Eugene, Oregon. Actually, Eugene, Oregon, and I sold 22 copies. And a lot of it was just people coming up, Wrestletopia, you're kidding, what's that about? And I'd give them the spiel, disgruntled pro wrestler, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it resonates pretty well. Wrestletopia has a pretty easy to digest and fun, high concept. But selling online is really challenging, I think. People are just like, there's a lot of noise, and people are like, I don't know what this is.
Yeah.
I guess my point is, if I could sell lots of copies, I would just keep making books and making comic books. And if I could do it for a living, you know what I mean? It is. First of all, it's obviously very gratifying to do. When video games will work for hire, we work for clients, and they tell us what to do. And it's great. It's a fun job. But Wrestletopia it's just Matt and I doing whatever we wanted to do, and it's something you own, right? It's nice to own something.
Yeah.
So I would just keep doing that. I hope to. I hope someday we have 3 or 4 books, and they sell enough that we can keep making them without our wives caring how much we spend.
And
it was fun.
Absolutely fantastic book. It's beautiful art, great story, funny, just funny. If you're a wrestling fan, if you're a comic book fan, you're going to go through this book and you're going to be like, oh, that's just great. I love this. Cannot recommend it enough. For everybody out there who's listening, where can they go online to actually find the book?
So the easiest thing it would be to go to our website, which is suspiciousbehaviorproductions.com. And I'm sure we'll share it in the description.
Yep.
But you can buy it over our website, and I think it's just $13.99. Unfortunately, you got to pay shipping, but we're really selling it for a low. Yeah, we're not selling it for a lot.
No, you're not. And yeah, it's over 200 pages for 14 bucks. Come on, people. You're not gonna find a book that big.
Yeah, and it's a complete, I think we talked about this, but it's a complete story arc. And it's a high quality print job. The binding's not going to fall apart on you. It's not on cheap paper stock or anything like that. It's a good book. So come to our website, and if you want to get it digitally, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, iBooks. We have the book for sale in a lot of places. So, but our website is probably the best places to go to.
Fantastic.
It'll be on the blog.
Awesome.
Absolutely. Ed, it has been a pleasure having you on.
Thank you so much.
You mentioned another book coming. Do you want to tease anything to the audience?
Well, it'll probably be like 4 years.
Well, in 4 years, you come on back and we'll talk again.
Yeah, we'll talk about it before. We're gonna do some sci-fi horror. We're starting between horror and sci-fi horror. It won't be more Wrestletopia, but again, we'll see. We'd like to do something different and maybe return to Wrestletopia someday. If if we can even make like a marginal success out of comics.
Heck yeah.
see that.
All right, everybody. The book is Invasion from Wrestletopia. You're going to find it online. Go check it out. Hit our Facebook group. Tell us what you think of it. But until next time, everybody.
Read
more
Comics.
You can hear our most recent 20 episodes on iTunes. If you would like to hear our older episodes, you can find them on our blog. Just go to bunchofdorks.com and click on the Cyclops.
Joe Dimension can be found on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. If you like what you hear, you can subscribe, rate, leave a review, tell a friend, or like us on Facebook. Thanks for listening.
Do you want to be part of the show? Draw us a fake comic book cover, and we'll use it to promote new episodes online.
If you'd like to promote your music, send us your MP3 and you can have a musical spotlight on our show. Plus, we'll add your link on our music page.
We have 3 t-shirt designs. Find them on the sidebar of the blog. Listen to the show. Wear the shirt.